The wind moaned low across the empty plains of Wyoming territory, carrying the scent of rain and sorrow. It was the kind of wind that made doors creak, fences groan, and lonely souls remember everything they'd tried to forget. Abigail Turner stood on the porch of her small ranch house, arms crossed against the chill, staring at the horizon where thunderheads rolled like dark bruises. Her black mourning dress clung to her frame, though a year had passed since the fever took her husband. She should have changed into something lighter by now. But every time she tried, something inside her refused. Changing clothes felt too much like letting go. The ranch had been Samuel's dream, one he'd built with his bare hands and boundless hope. But dreams, she'd learned, could die faster than a man's heartbeat. Since his passing, she'd been left with a patch of hard land, a few scrawny cattle, and debts that grew like weeds. "Mama?" A small voice called from inside. Abigail turned. Her daughter, little Millie, stood barefoot in the doorway, her nightgown too short at the ankles. "The lamp's flickering again," she said. "Should I add more oil?" Abigail forced a smile. "No, darling, leave it be. We need to make it last." Millie nodded, her brown curls bouncing. She was 6, too young to understand hunger or foreclosure, too young to know that men from the bank would be coming again soon. Abigail tucked a loose strand of hair behind her daughter's ear and tried to steady her heart. Then she heard it, the distant thud of hooves. At first it sounded like a storm moving closer, but the rhythm was too deliberate. Abigail's breath caught. Riders rarely came this far up the canyon unless they were lost or bringing trouble. She stepped off the porch, shading her eyes against the lowering sun. Through the dust, a single figure emerged, broad-shouldered, straight-backed, moving with the easy grace of someone who knew how to command a horse and the world around him. The dark gelding he rode gleamed with sweat, its muscles rippling under the last rays of light. Abigail knew that silhouette before she could see the face. Cole Barrett. He dismounted at the fence like the land belonged to him, boots crunching against the dry earth. A faint smile touched his lips when their eyes met, though his eyes themselves, storm gray and piercing, didn't smile at all. "Afternoon, Mrs. Turner," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Been a while." "Mr. Barrett." Abigail's voice came out steady, though her heart was not. "You've no business riding out this way anymore." Cole glanced toward the empty corral, the sagging barn, the weary woman standing proud despite it all. "Maybe not. But you've got trouble coming, and I aim to see it don't reach your door." Abigail's jaw tightened. "I've had my fill of men offering help. They expect payment for later." Cole's gaze flicked toward the window, where Millie's small face peeked through the glass. "This ain't that kind of help. You know me better than that." Did she? Once, maybe. Before the war. Before Cole Barrett rode off in blue while Samuel Turner wore gray. They'd been boys together, friends until the world turned them into enemies. And when the war ended, Abigail married one of them, while the other carried a wound that never healed. "I don't need saving," she said quietly. "Not from you. Not from anyone." Cole leaned against the fence post, arms folded. "Bank, don't see it that way. They're sending men up here tomorrow. I saw 'em in town. Hartwell's boys. The kind who don't bother knocking before they take what they want." Her stomach dropped. "You're lying." "Wish I was." He nodded toward her half-empty barn. "They mean to take everything left on this land. The cattle, the tools, maybe the roof over your head if it fetches lumber value." Abigail felt the ground tilt beneath her. She'd heard rumors, yes, but nothing certain. The last letter from the bank had promised another extension. "How do you know this?" she asked. Cole's mouth curved, but it wasn't amusement. It was anger. "Because Hartwell offered me the job of running them off. Said I'd get a fair share of what they seized. Thought I might like to finish what the war started." Abigail stared at him, stunned. "And you're here because?" Quote, "Because I told him no." His voice was low, final. "Because I rode straight here instead." Lightning split the sky in the distance, and the wind picked up again, whipping her skirts against her legs. She searched his face, finding the same contradictions that had always been there: danger and decency, sin and salvation. "Why, Cole?" she whispered. After everything? Why come now? He took a slow step toward her, boots sinking into the dust. Maybe because I'm tired of watching good things get taken by bad men. Maybe because your husband was my friend, and I owe him more than silence. Or maybe... He stopped a foot away, his voice dropping lower. Maybe because I can't stand another night, knowing you and that little girl are up here alone. Abigail's throat tightened. We've managed just fine. Have you? His eyes swept over the chipped boards, the empty well bucket, the thin smoke from the dying fire. Fine looks a lot like barely breathing to me. Before she could reply, a rumble of thunder rolled closer. Millie appeared at the door again. Mama, the wind's scary. Quote, Inside, sweet girl, Abigail said softly. Now. Cole waited until the child disappeared, then met Abigail's eyes again. Let me stay the night, just tonight. If those men come early, you'll need another gun. I don't want a gun in my house. Then think of me as a hammer, he said, one that still hits where you aim. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. She wanted to say no, to tell him to ride back to town and leave her ghosts alone. But the truth was, she hadn't slept soundly in months, not since strangers started cutting her fence and stealing her hens. You'll stay in the barn, she said finally. And at sunrise, you'll go. Cole nodded once, as if expecting no more. Fair enough. As he led his horse toward the half-burned barn, Abigail leaned against the porch post, trembling though the air was warm. She told herself she was only afraid of the storm. But that was a lie. When the lightning flared again, it illuminated his tall frame in the doorway, the muscles under his damp shirt, the gun belt slung low on his hips. He looked like a man who'd fought too many battles and didn't know how to stop. And for reasons she couldn't name. That frightened her more than the thunder ever could. Inside, Millie had already drifted to sleep. Abigail sat by the window, the lamplight low, watching the dark shape of the barn through sheets of rain. She saw him moving once or twice, checking doors, tethering his horse, making himself small in a place that barely deserved to shelter him. Then, through the downpour, another sound reached her. Hooves, not his. Her pulse quickened. More than one horse this time. 3, maybe 4. Men's voices carried faintly through the wind. She couldn't make out words, but she didn't need to. Cole had been right. They were coming. And the woman who'd spent a year learning how to survive was about to find out what it really meant to fight. The rain came harder, drumming against the roof in steady fury. Abigail could barely see through the window now, just the silver flashes of lightning and the vague, shifting shapes of men on horseback. She counted 4 of them, maybe 5. Their lanterns flickered in the storm like restless fireflies, drawing closer with every second. She felt the familiar cold grip of fear, not the kind that freezes you, but the kind that sharpens everything. She moved quickly through the house, pulling Millie's small body from sleep. Hush now, she whispered. Quiet, baby. We need to go. Millie blinked, confused. What's wrong, Mama? Nothing we can't handle. Get your shawl. Abigail's voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she loaded Samuel's old rifle. It had hung over the hearth since the funeral, a relic of better times. Tonight, it was a promise. Outside, a man shouted through the rain. Open up, Mrs. Turner! We're here on behalf of the bank! Abigail didn't answer. She saw a lantern bobbing closer. Too close! Then, out of the dark, Cole Barrett stepped into view. He was soaked to the bone, hat dripping, revolver in hand. Lightning carved his face in harsh lines, eyes like steel. Stay inside, he barked. And whatever happens, don't come out till I say, quote. Abigail pressed Millie's face against her skirts, whispering a prayer she barely remembered. A voice from the yard rang out, mocking. Evening, Barrett. Didn't figure to find you playin', watchdog for a widow. Hartwell send you? Cole called back, calm but deadly. Man's just collectin' what's owed. Ain't no crime in that. Depends how you collect, Cole's tone dropped. Now, I'm only gonna say this once. You boys turn those horses around and ride back to town, or you're levin' without 'em. Laughter answered him, loud and mean. The kind of laughter that came from men who'd done worse and slept fine after. Abigail heard boots hit the ground, the wet slap of men dismounting. Her heart hammered. Millie whimpered softly, and Abigail drew her close. Then, outside, thunder, lightning, and the unmistakable crack of gunfire. The first shot tore through the night, followed by two more. Abigail flinched, gripping the rifle tight. Rain pounded against the roof, drowning out everything but flashes of light and the echo of violence. It felt like hours before the yard fell silent again. When the door finally creaked open, Abigail raised the rifle, but stopped when she saw his silhouette. Cole stood there, chest heaving, shirt clinging to him like a second skin. Smoke curled from the gun in his hand. His hat was gone, his face streaked with rain and mud. "It's over," he said hoarsely, "for now." Abigail set the rifle down and sank into a chair, trembling with relief and shock. "Are they?" Quote, "Gone." He didn't elaborate, and she didn't ask. His eyes told her enough. He stepped closer, dripping on the wooden floor. "You hurt?" "No," her voice broke. "But you could have been. I've been shot at before." He gave a tired, half smile. "Didn't plan on making a habit of it in my old age, though." She looked past him toward the open door. Rain pooled in the threshold, and beyond it, the yard was quiet. Still, the kind of still that followed death. "Millie," she said softly, "go to the bedroom. Close the door and don't come out till I say." The child hesitated, eyes wide at the sight of the gun in Cole's hand. "Go on, sweetheart." He crouched down to her level. "Ain't no more bad men tonight. But you listen to your mama, all right?" She nodded and ran. When the door closed, Abigail faced him. "They'll come back, won't they?" "Maybe. Depends if Hartwell's got more dogs to send." She folded her arms, fighting the quiver in her voice. "And what happens when they do?" Cole holstered his gun, stepping closer until she could see the exhaustion in his face. "Then I'll be here to stop 'em again." "You can't stay, Cole." He gave a quiet laugh that wasn't amusement. "You think I came all this way to ride off and let 'em take everything anyway?" Quote, "You shouldn't have to fight my battles." "I ain't fighting your battles," he said, voice rough. "I'm fighting mine." She blinked, confused. He looked around the small house. The patched curtains, the cold stove, the shelf with 2 chipped plates. "You think I don't see what they're doing? Men like Hartwell, taken from people like you, like us, ain't about money. It's about power. And I've had my fill of watching good folks lose to bad ones." Abigail studied him in the flickering lamplight, rainwater glinting off his skin. She remembered the boy he'd been, the quiet one who fixed her father's fence and looked away when she smiled. And now here he stood, older, rougher, carrying scars the war hadn't left on his body, but on his soul. "You can't stay here," she said again, softer now. "The town will talk." "Let 'em." His jaw tightened. "Talk's all they're good for." "I mean it, Cole." He met her eyes then, and something in his voice changed. "You really think I care what they say?" "I'm done living by other people's rules." The air between them grew thick, charged with something unnamed. Abigail turned away, but he caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Abigail!" She froze. His voice was low, rough, and full of something that scared her more than the thunder outside. "You've been fighting, alone, long enough." "Not anymore." She looked up, rain still dripping from his hair, his eyes dark and steady. "Get your things," he said quietly. "You're mine now." Quote, her breath caught. It wasn't a threat, not a claim made out of pride or lust. It was a vow, fierce and unyielding, from a man who'd seen too much loss to let this one more thing be taken. "Cole," she whispered, "you don't know what you're saying." "I do." He stepped back, giving her space she didn't ask for but needed. "You can throw me out come sunrise if that's what you want. But tonight, I'm staying. I ain't letting the world take another thing from you." The storm raged on outside, wind howling through the cracks, but inside the house there was a stillness, fragile, trembling, full of heat and unspoken truth. Abigail turned away before he could see the tears on her face. She didn't tell him to leave again. She couldn't. Because deep down, For the first time in a long time, she believed him. The dawn came gray and heavy, draping the land in silence after the storm. Mist hung over the prairie like smoke after a battle, and Abigail Turner stood by the window, watching it drift across the wet fields. Cole Barrett was outside, already saddling his horse, every movement steady, deliberate, unhurried. He hadn't said much since sunrise. He didn't need to. The yard itself spoke loudly enough. The churned mud, the trampled grass, and 2 shallow mounds by the fence where the night's violence lay buried. Abigail had insisted on it. No lawman needed to see what happened here. The law, she'd learned, had long stopped serving widows like her. Inside, Millie slept soundly in her small bed, safe for now. Abigail leaned her forehead against the cool glass and closed her eyes. The weight of everything pressed down, grief, fear, exhaustion. But beneath it all, something steadier flickered. Hope, fragile as a candle flame. Cole came in without knocking. His shirt was clean, but damp from the fog. He smelled faintly of rain, smoke, and the leather of his saddle. She turned as he stepped into the room, that quiet strength following him like a shadow. "They'll come again," she said softly. "I know." He dropped his hat on the table, the brim still dripping. "Hartwell don't take losses kindly. Word'll reach him by noon." "Then what happens?" Cole looked at her, really looked. "Then we stop waiting to be hunted." She frowned. "You mean run?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I mean fight properly." The idea of it, her, Millie, guns, blood, made her stomach twist. "You can't take on Hartwell's men alone." "I'm not alone." His voice was quiet, steady. "You said yourself last night you're done being scared. That wasn't fear I saw when you picked up that rifle." Abigail swallowed hard. "I only did what I had to do." "Exactly." He took a slow step closer. "And that's what we're going to keep doing. What we have to." For a long moment they stood there in the soft morning light, 2 survivors bound by circumstance, and something deeper neither dared name. Finally, she said, "If we do this, if we stay and fight, what happens if we lose?" Cole's gray eyes softened. "Then we lose together." By midday the sky had cleared, leaving the earth slick and glistening. Cole rode to town, while Abigail mended the broken fence and kept her daughter close. The hours stretched long and thin, every creak of wood making her flinch. When Cole returned near sundown, he carried news and a warning. "They know," he said, stepping off his horse. "Hartwell's payin' men from 3 counties. Says he'll take this land by force if he has to." Abigail's throat tightened. "Then we leave." He shook his head. "Leave, and he wins. Again." Her hands clenched at her sides. "And if we stay, we die." "Maybe." He met her eyes, his voice low and sure. "But we'll die standin'." She turned away, her heart pounding. "You talk like a man who don't expect to live much longer." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I started talkin' like a man who finally found something worth dyin' for." The words cut deep, not because they were dramatic, but because they were honest. She felt them like a pulse beneath her ribs. That night, they set their plan. Cole checked every rifle, every door latch, every lantern wick. Abigail packed Millie's things quietly, pretending she wasn't listening when he whispered through the open window to his horse, "Storm, if I don't come back, you take 'em far from here." She wanted to tell him not to speak like that, but something inside her understood. Men like Cole Barrett didn't get to live safe lives. When the moon rose, silver and watchful, the sound came again. Hooves. Not 4 this time, not 6, but many. The kind of number that turned a man's courage into prayer. Cole stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand. Abigail followed, shotgun clutched tight. Millie hid under the table, just like she'd been told. The riders came in a long line, torches flaring, their voices rough with whiskey and greed. Hartwell himself rode at the front, his fine coat catching the torchlight like a snake's scales. "Evenin', Widow Turner," he called. "Heard you got yourself a new house guest." I came to collect what's mine." Abigail lifted the shotgun. "You've got the wrong idea, Mr. Hartwell. This land's already taken." Hartwell's smile turned thin. "By who? That washed-up soldier you've got hiding behind you?" Cole stepped forward. "I'm right here." "Ah," Hartwell said, his tone oily. "The Barrett boy. Didn't you kill enough men in the war, or did you come here to add widows to your collection?" Cole's eyes narrowed. "You talk too much." Hartwell laughed. "Shoot me, and they'll string you both up before sundown tomorrow." "Maybe," Cole said, "but you won't see it." Then the world exploded. Gunfire tore through the night. The first shot took out a torch, plunging half the yard into darkness. Cole fired again and again, each blast lighting his face for a split second. Hard, unflinching, relentless. Abigail fired too, the recoil nearly knocking her down, but she stood her ground, heart pounding with fear and fury. Men shouted. Horses screamed. A lantern shattered, spilling fire into the wet grass. The smell of smoke, gunpowder, and rain mixed into one choking blur. Through it all, Cole moved like a man possessed, guarding the doorway, never letting them near. He took a bullet through the arm but didn't flinch, just reloaded and kept firing until the last of them turned tail and fled into the dark. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of a dying flame and the hammering of her own heart. When it was finally over, Cole staggered against the porch post, pale but standing. Abigail rushed to him, catching his arm as he slumped. "You're hit," she said, voice shaking. "Just grazed." He winced, managing a crooked smile. "You should see the other fellas." "Sit down," she ordered, guiding him to the steps. "You'll bleed out if you don't let me." He caught her wrist, stopping her. "Look at me, Abby." She did. The torchlight flickered over his face, over the blood on his sleeve and the exhaustion in his eyes. But there was something else there, too. Something fierce and steady that reached right through the fear and the smoke. "I meant what I said last night," he murmured. "You and that little girl, you're mine now. Not like a thing a man owns, like the only good thing he's ever had." Her throat tightened. Tears welled but didn't fall. "Cole?" He leaned closer, voice rough. "Say it, Abby. Say you'll let me stay, not because you need me, but because you want me to." She could have fought it. Could have reminded him of all the reasons it was foolish, dangerous, impossible. But she didn't. Because in that moment, surrounded by smoke, ruin, and the faint glow of dawn breaking over the mountains, she finally understood that this, too, was survival. "I want you to," she whispered. He smiled then, small and tired but real. Then it settled. She helped him inside, past the spent shells and the smell of gunfire, to where Millie slept again, safe and dreaming. When the morning came, the sun spilled gold over the plains, touching the house, the graves, and the man lying on her couch with his arm bound in clean cloth. Abigail stood at the door, watching the horizon, and for the first time in years she didn't feel alone. Behind her, Cole stirred and said softly, "What are you thinking?" Quote. She smiled faintly. "That may be the hardest part of loosin'. Everything is learnin'. What's worth keepin'." Quote. He rose, wincing, and came to stand beside her. "Then what's worth keepin', Abby?" She looked at him, the man who'd faced down her demons and his own, and reached for his hand. "This," she said simply. "This life. What's left of it. Together." The prairie stretched endless before them, the sun climbing higher, the wind whispering through the grass like a promise. And as the world turned golden once more, Abigail Turner, widow, mother, survivor, took her first step toward the future, with the cowboy who'd finally found his reason to stay.